It's extremely important to set a good first impression for every employee that you bring on. My name is AJ Nardini. I am a partner and the COO at On Demand Solutions. At On Demand Solutions, we are your HR partner. Today, we're going to discuss the onboarding of a new employee. As a part of the onboarding process, the number one most important thing is the document I-9. The document I-9 is a document that is required to be filled out by every employee that is provided by the federal government that verifies an employee is able to work legally in the United States. It's important that this is filled out correctly and you have one on file for every active employee. Nowadays, a lot of businesses keep it online in some sort of HRIS system, but a lot of businesses are still doing them on paper. If you're doing it on paper, please go online, check to make sure you're filling it out correctly, you have no abbreviations, any major issues with your I-9 so that you can make sure that you're compliant. With this document I-9, you are required to keep any terminated employees' I-9s for a minimum of 3 years, so you should have all actives and any terminated employees that have been terminated in the last 3 years. Document I-9s can cost businesses hundreds of thousands of dollars. Every document I-9 that needs to be filled out has 25-ish places that you can make a mistake on, and each mistake can be worth up to $1,000 per mistake. So if you do 25 mistakes times 1,000, that means each document is worth $25,000. If you have 10 employees, that's $250,000 in risk that you may be assuming if your I-9s are incorrect or if you don't have them at all. It's extremely important that you take the proper steps to make sure they're correct and you audit them annually so that everything continues to be correct with all of your terminateds, with all of your actives, and everyone understands what the importance is of this I-9. With this document I-9, there are 3 types of documents that can be brought in to verify a person's employment. There are what are called a List A document, a List B document, and a List C document. When an employee is bringing in documents, they can either bring in one item from List A, which is something like a passport or a permanent resident card, or they need to bring in one document from List B and one document from List C. So a List B document is some sort of photo ID, something like a driver's license or a state identification card. An item from List C is a non-photo identificator, so something like a birth certificate or a social security card works as a List C. And again, they need to bring in either one List A document or something from List B and List C. It is extremely important that in Section 2 of the I-9, all of the proper information is filled out on this I-9 to make sure it's correct with the documents the employee brings in. I want to tell a quick story about the importance of an I-9. A few years back, we were working with a business that was responsible for a total of 19 I-9s. This was a small family-owned and operated business that had a handful of active employees, but had some terminated employees over the course of time that they were still responsible for having the I-9s and having them correct. The Department of Labor came in and audited them. They went through every single I-9 that they had, made checks where all of the mistakes were made, and when it was all said and done, the business was fined just over $150,000 for a total of 19 I-9s. It's extremely important that you have them all done, correct, and stored properly so that if you are audited by the Department of Labor, they can come in, they look at them, everything is good, and they will go away. Tax documents are also an extremely important part of onboarding. The one everybody knows about is a federal W-4 form. The federal W-4 form is for federal income tax to make sure that every employee is paying the proper taxes that they need to pay to the federal government. It's important that this is filled out correctly and provided to the payroll person so that it is entered correctly into the payroll system. Most of the states in the country also have state income tax that goes along with that. Make sure, depending on the state that you're located in, you have the correct state tax document filled out correctly and provided to your payroll person so that each employee's taxes are correct. We do not want an employee to get a shock when they receive their W-2 at the first of the following year. It's extremely important to set a good first impression for every employee that you bring on. A big part of this is onboarding versus orientation. So onboarding is really the legal process of making a person an employee of a business. So that's the I-9, W-4, direct deposit information, employee handbook, all of those documents that have to be signed. The orientation process is really an operations function. So we want to make sure that we have training available for every employee that comes in. So it's extremely clear what their job is going to entail, what the expectation of that job is, who is their supervisor. And it's a step-by-step process so that employee knows what track they're on, they know the progress that they're making, and they have everything that they need to be successful long-term, not only from a legal perspective, but from an actual job performance perspective also. What do you do if an employee has an emergency while they're at work? The number one thing you need to do is you need to make sure as a part of your onboarding process, you have emergency contact information in your system. If that's online, if that's on paper, if that's in the person's employee file, we need to make sure that we have that employee contact information. We are required by law to contact the proper people to make sure that the employee is taken care of if there is an emergency. So obviously, if it's an emergency, we want to call 911 first, then go to the emergency contact information so that their emergency contact is notified. So make sure as a part of your onboarding process or as a part of your update process every year, you make sure you get emergency contact information. Every employee needs to get paid. There are many ways that you can do this. The first one is direct deposit information. So as a part of the onboarding process, you need to make sure you're getting the onboarding information, or at least the information that it's going to take for an employee to be able to be paid properly in a timely manner. One of the trends we've seen the last 5 years or so are cash cards. There are all sorts of different companies that will do this, and it allows the employee to get their money in a very timely manner if they don't have a traditional bank account to direct deposit money into. So if you are a business where this may be the case, it may be something that is really good for you to look into, that is at zero to little cost, that will make sure your employees are taken care of. It will make them happy, and quite frankly, will make your life easier also. As a part of every process that a business has, you want to make sure that the culture of that business is involved. What I mean by this is an example of onboarding. So with onboarding, it's extremely important you take a systematic approach towards it. Every employee that's coming into a new business is going to get a first impression. You want the first impression to be that this business has all of their stuff together and is prepared for that person to come in and start working that day. The very first thing an employee sees is that onboarding process, making sure that I-9's filled out, that W-4, emergency contact information, direct deposit information, employee handbook, any other information that an employee may need to start their job and have successful employment with you needs to be a part of that onboarding process, and you need to take a systematic approach to that. This is extremely important to set the tone for the culture of your business for a new employee. If you like this information and the content that we are providing, please like and subscribe to this channel. If you would like more information about us, please find us online at www.odshr.com.